Basically, starting out, I don't really look too much at the structure or how it's set up. I'll just go in and freeze any sheets that are in there. I typically just kind of believe them with the first try at the structure. And I won't make any modifications to it at first. I'll just go ahead and freeze all the sheets. If there's any sheets that are close to each other, like these two right here, I'll go ahead and band them together, just with two bands like so, and go ahead and start wiggling it in. And then I'll stop it, bring it back out. There's another fairly large sheet up here, so what I would do is go ahead and band this one in as well and wiggle it together. And I'm not really concerned about making them line up at this point. I would just go ahead and get them close enough. There's a little helix here, there's a big helix here. These two pieces I'm just going to assume are by themselves connected to each other, so I'll band those together as well. And there's some bonds going. They're not real pretty. Usually at this point what I would do is remove the bands, go ahead and zoom in and look at what side chains are there. You can see on here there's a hydrophobic, and here's a hydrophobic, and on this one it's the other side. And you notice how some of these are long and some of these are short. They don't really line up real well, so what I would do is unfreeze this one and use the tweak tool to register shift it. Just trying to put everything in the same place. So I go ahead and take this down one and flip it over and then refreeze it and just do a quick shake.
Excuse me, Pletsch, are you working in 1.0 CI?
I am, yeah. I don't change it.
Could you open that behavior menu, because that really means a lot to a lot of people. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, and then at this point I would just go ahead and band all the sheets together and wiggle them in, see how they settle in. A lot of times you get like this side chain here that kind of blocks the way and keeps it from getting together real nicely. Sometimes you can just go in and manually pull them out, reposition them. Sometimes it makes it worse, but overall, yeah, you can get the basics of it to come together. Since I've got a few hydrophobics, a few hydrophilics over here, and all the hydrophobics up in here, I'm going to assume that the smaller helix probably goes on this side, and that the larger helix goes on this side with all the hydrophobics. So I would just band it over, put it roughly in the middle out here, and go ahead and rebuild it at that point, just to put the helix on that side and let it come together in somewhat of a helix shape. And once I got it over there, I just go ahead and kill the bands, freeze off a few segments away from each side. I missed one there, but that's okay. Let it come together as the proper shape. I'll kill that band while it's visible. And then go ahead and unfreeze and re-enable the bands. Shake it out. And go from there. Really not too concerned about how the helix lines up at this point. It's just a matter of getting everything in the same place, roughly where I want them to be. It'll kind of fly around a lot. Sometimes if it blows apart because the clashing's too bad, I'll go ahead and reduce the clashing importance real low to about like 0.1, 0.2, and wiggle a couple of short bursts for about a second or so, and then stop and then raise the clashing importance a little bit to like 0.2, wiggle for a second or two, and then do it again at like 0.5, 0.8, and then wiggle it out at 1, just to keep it from flying apart, because that happens sometimes. But that settles in pretty nicely like that with the helix there. The bottom of it still isn't very good. I I would rebuild that normally, but it's not a big deal. To get some coverage on this side, I would go ahead and band over just in the rough area over here and take this in with the other helix, throw it over there, get somewhat of a helix shape. Normally, as soon as I get partial helix shape, I'll just freeze off and rebuild just the section that still needs to find its proper shape. So like down here, just go ahead and freeze off that section of this helix and let it rebuild. I like to use bands during rebuilding. If it doesn't go where I want it to, I'm kind of impatient. I like this part of the folding to go fast because usually I will do several different starts until I find one that I like. Other than that, that's pretty much the basic structure right there. Without the bands, see how it kind of flies apart, but if you do short bursts of wiggles, it tends to hold it together all right. What happens is it'll start pushing away from itself, and then it will start pulling back together each time you start and stop it. So I like to start and stop the wiggle quite a bit, and a lot of times I'll just do short bursts of wiggles when it's very unstable for 1 or 2 seconds, and that seems to have a pretty good effect at stabilizing it because it'll blow apart, and then once things are kind of far apart, it'll start bringing them together again. And once it starts coming kind of close, I'll stop it and kill the bands. And then for this part out here, that could really go anywhere. This part out here could really go anywhere. I would just kind of freeze it and tuck it in somewhere like so. Do a local shake. And then this part up here, I'd probably freeze about right here. Bring it up in like so. I might even try to connect it somewhere on the side of the sheets. Just having it in the general area is usually all that I'm shooting for initially. It really doesn't want to go over there this time. That's okay. I would just kind of bring it out like so. I do kind of want these sheets to come together. At some point I would probably rebuild them, and I'd probably end up making this end the helix like others have done, just to see how it go. But that would pretty much get me to a starting structure to work with here. This helix keeps pulling out, so I would band it in, and then after getting it somewhere in place, it'd be finally time to shake, and then that's pretty much it for starting the protein. I'll just go ahead and pull everything together, get it in a general area, and at that point start moving pieces around, see how they look. Usually the first thing I'll do at this point is zoom in and look at the side chains and see if I like the way they line up. A lot of times what I'll look for is making sure that similar side chains are in the same places. You can see here we got duplicate side chains here. We got duplicate side chains down here, so I like the position of these two sheets. I'm missing a bond there, but that's okay. If I look over here, I've got duplicates. If I register shift this down some, it doesn't look like it'll go that far though. So what I would actually do is trim the top off there, since there's no bond there anyway, and freeze this and just drag this down and see if it wants to go, and if it doesn't want to go, I would undo and register shift it twice.
Pletsch, could you explain the register shift?
Yeah, it's basically on the tweak tool. When you choose tweak, you can choose the arrows that are pointing up and down along the side of the rotate, and that'll just move the whole sheet. It flips it upside down when you do that. Let's see here. So like if I click it once, it'll flip it over this way.
Mm-hmm.
And I could either go with this here and try and bring it together, or I could shift it one more time. These alanines here are, I'll want to put two of them next to each other. Like up here, I've got the valine next to each other. Down here, there's the aspartates next to each other. I like on sheets when you have matching side chains, trying to put them next to each other. Seems to be a lot more stable that way and helps out. So pretty early on, I'll usually try and move the sheets around to where similar pieces are in similar areas. And now here's a case where it's pretty rough. The score is way far in the negative. So what I would generally do is move the clashing importance down pretty low. I'll put it at about 0.3. Wiggle until it's moved around a bit. Bring it up a bit. Wiggle until it stabilizes a bit. And then go ahead and bring it all the way up again to 1. And that'll help keep it from blowing apart when you wiggle out from a really far into the negative score. And I'd probably run with this sheet position here because everything looks like it's lining up well. If this doesn't work, I'd move it down one more time. And at this point, I basically just go in and rebuild the loops, get anything that's red out, and then I would run a rebuild script after that. A lot of times these are hand folding only, so I'll use there's a script that I've got shared. It's called my GUI script, and another one called GUI compressor. And I'll run both of those, usually compressor first and then my GUI script. Those will help stabilize it a little bit and clean it up, get the side, kind of manipulates the side chains. But that's pretty much it. From this point, I would just keep reworking any red sections.
Excellent.
And rebuilding.